It's Bible Club, it's Bible Club, it's Bible Club in our town. There's singing, there's laughing, let's get the word around. Folks are all excited, we are all delighted. It's Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club in our town. It's Bible Club, it's Bible Club, it's Bible Club in our town. There's singing, there's laughing, let's get the word around. We're all excited, we are all delighted. It's Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club in our town. So for the last 2 weeks, we have been talking about the Apostle Paul. And the Apostle Paul wrote the book that our lessons have been from. I think that if Maddie was here, she would remember that that was a certain book in the Bible. But I think you guys can remember what book the Bible lessons came from because it's the same verse that our verse is from. So does anybody know what book of the Bible our lessons are from? It's the same book as our verse? God. God wrote the book, but which book are our lessons from? Try again?
Yes.
The Bible. Which book in the Bible that God wrote? It's the same place that our verse is from. Okay, so somebody over here knows. I hear. Did you hear them? Is that what, did somebody over here say Galatians? Yes. Our verse is from Galatians, right? And our lessons are from Galatians, and what we have been learning about the last 2 weeks is that people are not saved because they do good works. They are saved because they believe on Jesus. They are justified by faith of Christ and not by works. The first week we said salvation is by faith, and the second week we said that salvation is not by works. And she's already right next to you. And we found out that the people that lived where the Galatian people, they had believed on Jesus already. And then you might remember that some other people came by and said, oh, what Paul said is good, but you need to do some more. You need to follow the rules that the Old Testament says. And one of the things they must have said also, because Paul talks about it in his book, they must have said, well, you know Paul, he never was around Jesus. And Peter and the other apostles, they were with Jesus. And they are the real apostles. And they keep all the rules of the Old Testament. And so these people must have said something like that because Paul took the time in the beginning of his book to Galatians to tell the Galatian people that he was an apostle too. And there's 5 things he told them about himself that is just like Peter and James and John and the rest of the apostles. And so if Paul is an apostle, just like Peter is an apostle, what Paul says in the Bible, we ought to do, right? So here are the 5 things that Paul said that made him an apostle, just like the others. Now, one of the things that the apostles had done, the apostles like Peter, James, and John, they were with Jesus. They saw Jesus. They were with Jesus. They saw Jesus after he rose from the dead, and they had been with Jesus for about 3 years. And Paul told the people of Galatia, he said, you know about me, and you know that I was persecuting Christians, but when I was on my way to Damascus, I saw Jesus. Did Paul see Jesus? He did. Remember, he was walking on the road, and what came out of heaven? A really bright light, and what happened to Paul when the bright light shined around him? Do you remember, Chloe? He fell down on the ground. And then he looked up, and he heard a voice. He said, who are you? And who answered him? What's his name? Jesus. Jesus answered him and said, I'm Jesus, the one that you're persecuting. And then Paul said, what do you want me to do? And Jesus told him what to do. So at that point, Jesus was in heaven. Had he been resurrected? Yes. Jesus had already lived. He had already died. He had resurrected. And he had already gone up to heaven. And he showed himself to Paul. So Paul had seen Jesus, right? And he was resurrected. And he saw Jesus after he was resurrected. Then Paul said, after that, I went away from everybody, all by myself, for 3 years. And while I was away for 3 years, Jesus taught me. Jesus taught me. The things that I know are things that Jesus taught me. Now, how long had Jesus been with the apostles when he was on the earth? For 3 years. And how long did Paul learn from Jesus, away from everybody else? For 3 years. So Paul's saying, look, I saw Jesus just like Peter, and I was trained by Jesus just like Peter and John and the rest of them. And then he said, after those 3 years, I went to visit with Peter and with James. And when I was visiting with them, they accepted me just like I was one of them. Right? So, Chloe, if I came to your house, could I just hang out at your house just like I was one of you? No. But Nevaeh can hang out at your house just like she's one of you guys, right? Because she fits in. She's your cousin, right? But I can't just hang out at your house because I'm not one of you guys.
You can.
I could visit, but I can't just go around and do whatever I want. And that's what Paul was saying. Paul was saying, I met with Peter and James, and I fit in right with the rest of them, with all the other apostles. So do you see, Paul is saying, I'm an apostle. Just like Peter and James, I was an apostle. Then he said, a long time after that, about 10 years later, I went back to Jerusalem. Now he's saying Jerusalem because the people that had come to the Galatians said they were from Jerusalem. And they had come from James and Peter, and they had done all these things, and you have to do more than believe in Jesus. And Paul's trying to say, no, what I said is from God. And so Paul tells about 10 years after this, he went back to Jerusalem. This time, he had Barnabas with him, and he had a man whose name was Titus. Titus was not a Jewish man. So Titus had never done all the special rules that the Jewish men had to do. And you know what Paul told the Galatian people about Titus? He says, I was there with all the apostles were there with us, and Titus was there, and none of the apostles told Titus that he needed to do what the Jewish men did in order to be saved. None of them. So, none of those apostles told Titus that he needed to do what, and all the apostles accepted me with Barnabas as an apostle. Now there was some people, not apostles, there were some people that came in and they wanted to spy on us. They wanted to see if we were going to obey the laws. But we found out, we realized that the special laws, the special rules that the Jewish men obeyed were not important. Only what is important is if people believed on Jesus. So those are 4 things. 4 things. The first, Paul saw Jesus after he rose from the dead. Second, Paul was taught by Jesus for 3 years. Third, Paul went and met with Peter and James, and they accepted him as an apostle. Fourth, Paul and Barnabas brought Titus with them to the other apostles. All the apostles were there, and they all accepted him and extended to them fellowship as if they were apostles just like them. But I said there would be 5 things, right? Paul gave 5 things, and this is the 5th thing. Paul told about some time. There was a time when Paul was with the people in Antioch. He was with believers, people that were children of God, but they weren't Jewish men. They weren't Jews that obeyed all the Jewish rules. And Peter was there, and everybody was fellowshipping together. It was almost like Thanksgiving dinner. It's almost like Thanksgiving dinner, and Peter was there, and Paul was there, and all these other people that were not Jews were there, and they were eating and fellowshipping and talking and enjoying themselves. And then some people came up from Jerusalem. Some of these people who said you had to do extra things in order to be saved came up, and when Peter saw them, he thought, oh, I'm going to stay away from these people because I don't know. And Peter set a bad example. Peter set an example so bad that many people said, oh, we can't eat with you because you're not Jews. And so some of the Jewish believers were over here, and the rest of the non-Jewish people, the people that weren't Jews, that believed on Jesus, were over there, and they wouldn't fellowship. And Paul said, that's not right. And so you know what Paul did? Paul went to Peter. Now Peter, who's Peter? He's an apostle, right? He's the one that all these people were saying, oh, but Peter says you have to do more. And Paul said, I went to Peter, and I told him, in front of people, I told him publicly that he was wrong. And that he shouldn't do that. And that he knew that we were not justified, that he knew that we might be justified by the faith of Christ, and not by the works of the law. And so Paul corrected Peter. So, can just anybody go correct an apostle? No. Only an apostle could correct an apostle, we might say, right? And so Paul is saying, look, Peter was wrong, and I told him, and he knew he was wrong. And you know what the Bible tells us that later on, Peter and Paul still were very good friends. They were very good friends, and they were friends because Paul did what was right, and Peter then did what was right too. So, today we learn that Paul is an apostle. Paul did not walk around on the earth when Jesus was doing all his miracles and all that. He wasn't part of them. In fact, he didn't believe in Jesus. Maybe he didn't even know about Jesus at that time. But after Jesus went up into heaven, not long after that, Paul started persecuting believers. But Jesus came to him, and Paul saw Jesus. The real live Jesus. He saw Jesus. He was trained by Jesus. He was accepted by the other apostles. He brought Titus to the other apostles, and Titus was not required to do any special Jewish rules. And Paul corrected the apostle Peter when he was wrong. And all of this, Paul wanted the Galatian people to know that, because Paul said, the things I learned from Jesus. And what I learned from Jesus is that works, all these good works, they're good to do, but we don't do them so that we can be saved. We do them so people will know that we are saved. We do them because we love Jesus because he saved us. We don't do them so that we can be saved. We don't say, well, I think I'm saved because I go to church, or I think I'm saved because I believe the Bible. We say, I go to church because I'm saved. I read my Bible because I'm saved. I do those things because I'm saved, not so that I can be saved. And so next week we're going to have a review about faith. What is faith? Because our verse says we can be justified by faith and not by works.